IAmA. I was working in a bank. While it was robbed, I was a teller at a bank that was robbed by a man who claimed to have a gun. When he entered the bank, I was not at my station because I was putting something away in the vault. Upon returning to my station, I heard him tell my coworker that he had a gun and he wanted all the money in her drawer. I froze because I had been warned about this happening, but being in the situation was much different than I ever expected it to be. The thief made off with around $2,300 because we were not allowed to keep much money in our top drawer. He was only in the bank for about a minute, but the minute seemed to drag on because it was a tense situation. My coworker, who had been robber before at a previous bank, knew exactly what to do. She gave him all the money in her drawer and waited for him to leave before pressing the silent alarm. We were trained to do this because it avoids any possible hostage situation or further harm being done to the employees. At the time, I was 18, and I was at the end of my senior year in high school. I had been working at the bank for about a year when this happened. I have also been held up while working as a bank teller. Guy walks in with a sawn-off shotgun, taps it loudly on the hand railing where customers line up, and tells everyone to get on the ground. I was training someone who had only recently started, and I vividly remember lying on the ground and we're both looking at each other like WTF. There was a moment there where I thought fuck, this could be it, but nobody was hurt. Although I had to get up and hand over cash to this guy, I never got the shotgun in my face. One of the other staff did, and watching the camera replay after, it was chilling to watch. It never really affected me all that much. In fact, I pity him in a lot of ways. He was abused as a kid, in and out of jail his whole life. He was stealing the money to send to some mail order Russian chick or something that he had fallen in love with online. The police recovered almost all the money as he spelt her name wrong on the Western Union transfer. He was caught a few days later. Some good came from it. Since it happened in the morning, we got to finish work early. Plus they bought us pizza and beer, yay. Is it true that the news doesn't report on all bank robberies because of how successful they are and how frequent? The news won't sensationalize a bank robbery unless it's interesting. Like that guy a few years ago who had a bunch of people show up looking for a fake job advertised on Craigslist.org dressed in the same getup he wore for the robbery and ran down an embankment to a waiting boat. I don't even remember how much he got. Probably not $1 million. But he did it so stylishly that it was in a bunch of news reports. It will, however, be in the police blotter. I love crime books, crime news, etc. Fascinating stuff. So I've got some 411 to share. A successful bank robbery is, on average, $3K and very often less. $5K tends to be the 90th percentile and $10K is 99.90h. This is according to an FBI agent, father of a friend who specialized in tactical deployments. Most bank robberies are successful, not in that the robber or robbers get lots of cash, but in that they get some and get away. Tellers are told to do what a robber says. Good advice. Robbers can be desperate. The thing is that every time someone robs a bank they are taking a risk, and, as Einstein said, in an infinite timeline anything that can happen must happen. So eventually, again from the FBI guy, everyone gets caught unless they stop. If the guy's really successful over a long period of time, he/she'll get a task force specifically assigned to them and end up a special target, and then, well, there are, on average, 22 bank robberies a day in the United States with the second highest clearance rate of just over 50%. Murder has the highest clearance rate of any crime with a rate of just over 60%. To put that in perspective, every year in the US 8,000 people get away with murder. A cleared crime is a crime in which an arrest is made on the case. The majority of bank robberies are done by a single person, usually a man between the ages of 18 to 25, who commits what is known as a single teller robbery. He will usually pass a note demanding cash, and the average take is usually around $2,500 to $4,000. The takeover bank robberies, in which a group of armed assailants take over the bank and target the more lucrative bottom drawers and vaults, usually net between 10 to 15 times the amount of a single teller robbery, depending on the time of day and amount of money that is kept in the bank branch. There are random instances of luck. The Trenchcoat Robbers, a duo who robbed banks for upwards of 20 years before being caught, pulled off the most successful takeover bank robbery of all time at $4.4 million. They were only caught when they started writing down names of branches they had hit because they were getting old and were forgetting which banks they had knocked over. That, and one of them paid $126,000 in cash to have a private contractor build him a home from scratch, and he went to the eyes. I spent a year as a cashier in a bank and thankfully never got raided, although, being in the middle of Cambridge, we did close a few times because of huge protests and perceived threats. Really, Cambridge students, if you're going to protest about NHS cuts, don't do it outside a bank, and especially don't say there's 100 of us and 3 of them. Why don't we just rush it? So serious hugs there. How much help did anti-raid and post-raid procedures actually help? Did they do much at all? Did your perception of them change from just being a box to tick to something actually helpful? It made sense after the event occurred. Before that, I always thought the procedures were something they just had in place to warn us, but they really did help. We were told to write down everything we could remember right after the police were contacted. By doing this, the police were able to have an accurate description of what happened and a description of the robber. Proof of karma. A good friend of mine was held up while working at a bank. He was one of the guys who sits in the desks out in the open to open new accounts, etc. It happened on a Saturday. The thing is, the night before he was out with us at a bar and was pretty drunk. However, he still ended up going home with a chick. Only problem was, he was dating someone else at the time. He did the one night stand routine at the chick's place, which ended up being right near his bank. The next day he figured screw it and did the walk of shame wearing reacking of booze and in the same work clothes he had on the day before. He thought since it was 8 AM on a Saturday he could at least put his head down on his desk and sleep for an hour, because not many people come in before 9 AM. The next thing he realizes is someone is waking him up by tapping him on the shoulder with a silver handgun. My friend does what he is told, hands over some money, and the guy leaves W/O hurting anyone, and apparently the robber was actually pretty civil during the ordeal. He wasn't allowed to tell us how much the guy got away with, and he told us we couldn't tell the story B/C his girlfriend would find out. TL, my friend cheated on his GF and the next day was held up at gunpoint. At any moment, did you fantasize about how you would thwart the robbery and save the day? I have thought about it since then, but not at the time. I was frightened for my coworker, but there was not a time during the robbery where I thought about jumping through the glass and stopping him. It wasn't my money, and I didn't really care for the bank that much. Sorry I don't have a more interesting thought process to entertain you with, but in my mind, I picture myself lunging over the teller line, through the glass hole and tackling him. I would use the pen that's linked to the check counter to stand the man's hand to make him release the gun. I would then give the gun to my coworker so she could take her revenge on him for threatening her, while I use a potted plant to knock the robber out. Does it make you more comfortable knowing that there are people like me that will carry my EDC weapon into the bank and everywhere else I go that's legal, and would put this guy on the ground if it happened while I was there? Alternatively, you could try to draw and get shot yourself before getting a round off. Or you could draw and get somebody else killed. Or you could draw, fire, and kill an innocent bystander, because real life is not the Wild West, and when the adrenaline and terror of being held as a hostage at gunpoint hits you, you probably won't be as accurate as you were at the range. Just playing the devil's advocate, I carry myself, but 9 out of 10 folks who make statements like the one above are living in a fantasy world if they think that they will be able to put slugs into a moving target like they would a paper one. I support the Second Amendment out of the principle that if citizens couldn't own guns, only the military and police would have them. If we had a police force that didn't have firearms, similar to Euro countries, I'd strongly reconsider my position. Point is, I agree with you. Anyone saying we'd be a lot safer if we all had guns isn't thinking about how fucking stupid 99% of people are. I think that's a risk, getting shot ourselves, we all take as carriers. A caveat I didn't add, since I was just trying to ask a simple question, is that I wouldn't draw unless 1. I really thought my life was in danger. By the description of this robbery it sounds like this guy was doing a quick smash and grab type robbery and wanted in and out as quick as possible with as little interaction with people as possible. And 2. I either know for certain that I can get the drop on the guy, or I think getting shot is a definite possibility and I want to get a shot off anyway so that I don't go down without a fight. I'm a TN permit holder, so I've taken the 8-hour class and I've taken a university marksmanship class, studied the scenarios, mentally prepared for them, go to the range at least once a month, etc, etc. I, like most responsible handgun carriers, will practice safety at all times. That includes making sure the area behind the target is safe. And I'm not under the delusion that I can hit a moving target, as I realize it's incredibly difficult even in a video game. I hope that, if I ever do have to draw, my target is either stationary or moving directly towards me. I'd love it if you liked and subscribed.